Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Shoutouts to Andreas, Deacon, my boy Scott, Pedro, and everyone else that engages on my posts. And Sarah, keep it up, man. You'll get there someday. And everyone else for playing memes.
Okay, crazy idea. I'm gonna get a bunch of people I love together, who I respect, who have different ideas, and we're gonna hear them out. What do you think? Idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. So one of the people who actually, I wish it was like my idea, but actually Darren gets the credit. Darren was the one who came up with this. So Darren, maybe you want to introduce first. I want you all to introduce yourselves, but let's let Darren tell us who he is first, and a little bit about like what you kind of want to get out of tonight, maybe.
Oh, what a thought. That's good to ask always. Who are we and what's important to us? What do we value? Who do we value? My name's Darren Nelson. I'm originally from Santa Cruz, California, and I currently live in Eugene, Oregon, but I'm moving to Goslar, Germany soon.
Based.
And let's just say I care about people genuinely, how I feel deep down. And maybe, you know, I have my own struggles, of course, as a human being, and I have my own issues myself, but I connect with others through what we share with one another. And I get discouraged when I see people unwilling to remind themselves of that. I love humanity rather than inhumanity, like I often say. And so I just like to move forward and think together. And then being in Germany, it's a very different perspective on U.S. politics. While we're in the U.S., we're quite consumed by our echo chambers and who we want to identify with, and we're very suspicious of those we don't. And if we keep diving deeper,
Shout out to Canada.
Sorry.
Oh,
yeah.
Shout out to Canada too. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Are you in Germany? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not in Germany at the moment. I was in Europe only until 2 months ago, and it's a long story, but I'm going back December 9th because Americans only have 90 days in the Schengen area before they would be illegally staying. And I considered going to Albania to visit a friend and staying 3 months there, but I had trouble with my credit card, and I had to come back to the United States to tend to a lot of issues regarding banks and BS. So
yeah,
I came back.
They lock you down.
Yeah. Sorry?
They lock you down. I've been in that first world problem myself. But okay, so it sounds like you want to communicate. Also, Alyssa is here with us. Alyssa, you've never been on the show before, but I'm excited to have you here.
Yes, never. Open the computer today. Yay.
Yeah, actually, it's the first time on a Chromebook. But you're cool, and you're also pretty worldly in a lot of ways. You're a pharmacist, and you've been through. I mean, when the riots in Minnesota happened, and we were seeing, because we have someone here with diabetes.
Oh my God, I remember those photos, man, of the ransacked your place. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
My heart goes out to you. That was rough. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
and to all the people in the inner cities who couldn't get access to their medications, right? It was a huge issue. I think first world people that can travel to another county and can afford to go to a different Walgreens don't understand how impossible it is for somebody without a car in Minneapolis
Oh.
who's maybe 65 years old or something, like a lady, get her medication.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
really
yeah.
hits in a harder level, but also because of that,
Yes.
to introduce terrorist Chris, your friend here, Brendan, who has diabetes, right? That's your situation, and you've had to deal with medication like this all your life, right?
Since I was 14, I'm 35 now.
So half of your life you've been
Had
worrying
to-
about diabetes medication pretty much on the hourly basis, like every day.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
kind
I
of
mean,
like normal to me now.
so I feel like
Yeah.
these are important things because we don't think about how these affect everybody and how people live like literally 12 to 24 hours until they get the next piece of medicine they need to survive, and that is part of what we're
or they
talking about.
can't afford it, and then
Yeah, straight
Really
up,
hard.
can't even.
I
What
don't
can you do?
understand. You can't not afford it.
Yeah.
You'll like I can't go a couple hours, but I can't do
Yeah.
anything if I don't have insulin. I can't make any plans to do anything.
Mhm.
Nothing.
Right.
And
So
gotta
I
make
think
sure
this
I have
is-
other supplies on me too.
So I think this is like not an abstract. We're going to talk about things like that, how medication costs, how big companies, how that affects your life, and what. All right, that also leads into David, because David, you look like you've been spending all day at a
Dude,
farmer's
I'm
market.
freaking haggard right now, you guys. So like I agreed to do this, but like I've been debating with people all day at a farmer's market. And so like I got home and I was just like, I'm gonna smoke a joint and just take it.
Do you currently live in Santa
Comes out
Cruz?
and it's just like, dude, you want to do a podcast? So if it looks like I'm overcompensating, like energetically, it's because I'm trying to keep myself like
You
awake.
totally are.
Like I'm totally faded, FYI. But I'm totally down to have a talk because it's something that interests me. So being invited to something that interests me, it's hard to say no. So
I guess it interests everybody in the
apple over
country.
here 'cause I haven't
technically.
eaten enough today. I drank coffee. I didn't sleep much. I got like 5 hours last night. That's not enough for me personally.
sounds like
But, yeah. Anyway, I'm here.
Well, I know, and also like
Sure.
I feel like at the end of the day, you've probably heard all, and said all, the arguments that people have for
I've been
who they're voting
tabling
for.
at a farmer's market every week for I know it's over 7 months. So like I go every Sunday and I talk to people.
with the
all
farmers
day.
market.
Yeah.
Sounds
Or I have
Hey,
a sign,
to get-
I have
to
a, I have
get
a change
personal.
my mind sign, so I'm like a living meme, So I just hang out there with my sign now because I'm not campaigning. I'm not telling anybody who to vote for. I'm just having conversations around how we got here, and things that irk me and giving. I have the opportunity to speak my mind about certain things, and then people have the opportunity to. It doesn't always have to be complete debate, but people are often what is occurring is people are offering rebuttals to just general acknowledgments. So, and then me going through step by step with my process and it's great, but it's very action packed. It gets very intense. Today in particular was especially intense because a lot of these people come back again and again and they want to keep talking it out. And there'll be big groups of people, and it's just like, it's a whole exchange. And so, yeah, anyway, you get the idea.
Well, all right. So wait, Darren. So do you
Yeah.
think it's a prudent moment to open with your BBC article? You had an article you wanted to check out. Did you want to check that out now?
I care a lot about us asking about the cap of insulin prices to $35.
You want to start with that? Let's work with that
Yeah.
first. Okay. Insulin
And
support.
I was just curious. One moment.
Wasn't that supposed to be years ago? And it seems like it was never actually
It's still-
implemented.
So I wanted to ask, Alyssa, actually, is that the case at the moment? Is the Inflation Reduction Act, did that actually cap insulin to $35 a month? And it is a major accomplishment of this current administration.
No, I don't think it's $35 for everybody.
It's different
Definitely
everywhere.
not for like Medicare. And I actually got asked that this week. Why isn't it $35? And I actually don't know. I don't know if it just takes that long or who's mostly in charge.
8.4 million people in the U.S. have diabetes, supposedly. Maybe more.
They're counting
Yeah.
type 2 though, also. Not
know
everyone's
much.
independent.
Do you mind? I'll say where this comes from, but
Yeah,
nearly one third of these patients of those millions I mentioned were paying 35 or far more per month in 2019, according to the latest available data from the Department of Health and Human Services. The study said 20% of all insulin users pay more than $70 per month at the time, including many who are spending hundreds of dollars. The IRA out-of-pocket cap took effect at the start of 2023, so we've only had a year, and it's interesting to ask how long it takes to be implemented and what complications there would be along the way. But it only applies to the government's Medicare program for people age, as you mentioned, Andreas, 65 or older,
Yes.
and the disabled. Yeah.
So we did
there
have
are
something
clearly
like
younger
that.
people being left
But
out.
is it itself like a disability? Like if you're saying for the disabled, it's like seems like people who need insulin would
Yeah,
count
isn't
as a
that
disability.
technically
I don't know.
considered a disability?
If you're
Yes.
type 1 diabetic with unregulated diabetes, you're not gonna make it to 65 and over.
I mean, what is a disability? Am I right?
I don't know if I'm gonna make it to 65.
I mean,
Well,
that doesn't
I
have to
think
be your
that's the-
freaking
that's the
identity,
issue.
but it's something that you're dealing with.
I find that to
we all
be-
need food, clothing, and shelter. You know, there's like basic.
So what I'm seeing from the CNN page is that Eli Lilly in March instituted an automatic 35 cap out on out-of-pocket costs. So that's different than the cost of production or the cost of sale.
Yeah.
What they're saying is that the government or some sort of subsidy will go in and pay Eli Lilly or some other company that's manufacturing this insulin far more necessarily than the 35 cost, which is crazy because it doesn't necessarily have to cost that much to make insulin, especially through generics.
It shouldn't.
Right.
There are generics. I know it's still slow, and there's not generics for all of them.
So is this because are they intentionally doing their best to keep people prescribed to drugs that are not available in generics, constantly giving them new drugs? Or why do you think that is, that we're not on, I mean, at this point, 2024, tried and true generics, right?
Yes. I think that there's a lot of new brands that come to market, and then there's a newer form of insulin. Also, then you've got insurance coverage where they only cover the brand or they only cover the generic. And if they write for one, it's a prior authorization. If this one works better for this person, it takes, I don't know, weeks, or the doctor has to fill out forms. It's a very long process. It also was very long to get insulin to be $35. The paperwork to do it was crazy. And that was like a year ago. To try and actually get someone that can't afford it, it took a very long process to do it, which that's not help when they need their insulin now.
Wow.
I have a question. Can I ask you something?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't actually know this. I don't know. So Bernie's bill that he had, that was the Medicare for All bill. The Medicare for All bill that was presented, that Nancy Pelosi said it's not time yet, and she'd instructed the squad to vote against it. Was this connected, or was it the same bill? Like what?
I don't think so. I'm still confused with Medicare for All, and, like all of Medicare.
Would you mind?
All of it was.
Winslow joins us. Thank you, Winslow.
Yeah. No.
Hey, Winslow.
I feel like no one really knows what Medicare for All, or I don't know. I just know people keep
The
saying they want
insurance
to.
companies are a big issue, and so I'm kind of a bit of a single issue voter when it comes to corporate capture. So I'm like, that rotating door where you have CEOs and the like basically being regulators for the very corporations that they were previously, like that's such a core factor of tracing back corruption and influence. And so you're like, if you're wondering, like, I don't want like corporations to be determining policy that directly affects like regular people's lives. And so and the insurance companies were hell, especially in 2020, you know, like that when people complain about a lot of the stuff that was happening with the hospitals, it's not in many ways as much to do with the doctors and the medical professionals who are, you know, out there in the field. It's like, it's also the fact that the pharmaceutical companies were like, when people are talking about every person that's put on a respirator, they're going to get this much money, and they're like, the hospital gets that much, and people treat it like this is just about the hospital, but the hospital's put in a certain position. It's not dissimilar to the issue we have with this idea to put a price cap on retailers when the manufacturers are more the source of the issue. So you're like, they have overhead So they're saying, oh, how much am I charging for whatever it is, for these cigarettes? It's like they have a certain amount that they're trying to make what they can out of that, and it needs to be enough to be a living wage for people. So my fear is that would destroy small businesses. The idea when people talked about Kamala Harris as a communist, it really irked me for a long time because I didn't see real evidence of that. But I gotta say that price cap for the retailers was the first time that I was like, oh my God, that approaches that. I'm sorry, but the other thing that approaches that is the way in which Clear Choice, DNC Super PAC, has basically, if you go to their website, if you look at those 3 sentences, they're basically saying that all third parties are spoilers, and we are seeking to get rid of all third parties. So from my understanding, it's like $1 billion super PAC. And so going after opponents like that, it's like, because when like Putin was elected, and they were like, and there was this whole argument that was like, hey, this is like, was he able to win with 80% of the vote if he's supposedly so bad? And people made the argument that he suppressed all opponents. And so I want to vote for certain people. I was a big enthusiast for Bernie Sanders and his notice there was no debunking websites on Bernie Sanders' math and everything, because he was so based. He really was. And so, and Debbie Wasserman-Schultz testified under oath that they had every right to do what they did, sabotaging Bernie's campaign. That was all laid out explicitly, that he won the primaries. He even said so like a month ago on a podcast. Like, if you look in the background when the delegates were announcing state by state that Hillary won the election, you can see delegates holding signs saying Bernie won this state. And they were major like swing states. He was the first candidate to win all 3 caucus states. And if you remember what happened,
Who would have thought that people's livelihood and health would have united so many people? I don't know.
Oh my God.
May I please remind us to stick to insulin, or is it fair to say that? Okay.
I feel like they're related though, because the idea of
it's a weave. It could be a weave.
True.
I've heard about these weaves.
Let's use it to point to insulin though as the example, which is that you could either have socialized medicine where we have benchmarks for prices we want to see manufactured, which I'm a big fan of. I like the idea of having benchmarks for where we want to see essential resources that people need. Like I said, this is something that we invest in having our society sustain itself, like making sure roads exist that are good roads for truckers, right? We want to have medicine that keeps people alive. I think benchmarks are great. That's different though than what we're talking about. We're talking about companies are saying, well, we'll have the government pay $1,000 of tax dollars for a $30 insulin. At that point, it's more like the Air Force One toilet paper rolls for $1,500 to me. And I'd like to see insulin actually just cost $35. I think the idea of can we get it to that price is a good idea, but that's not what we're doing. We're saying, can we cheat that somehow, right?
Yes, and I wish, as a pharmacist, I wish I actually understood even more why it is not like that. I know that it takes research and all, like you have to have the innovation and all this stuff, but I don't know why it would take this long.
May I say? I thought this would be very beneficial to allow everyone to continue speaking. Reading this, Medicare beneficiaries make up about half of all U.S. insulin users. Before the cap, 37.5 of them, or what is 1.5 million people, did pay more than $35 a month. And I wanted to reference Bernie for you, Charlie. Almost 1 million people who are either covered by private health plans, state Medicare programs, or who have no insurance were paying more than $35 per month for their insulin in 2019. The 3 largest insulin makers, Novo Nordisk, Sanofi, I've never heard these, and also Eli Lilly, you mentioned.
Eli for sure.
I gotta check their stock price.
I'll finish after this. They implemented price cuts of up to 78% for some of their insulin products and expanded discounts offered by patients' assistance programs. None of these measures, though, are protected by law, and drug makers can choose to raise prices again. I only wanted to ask, those who are most affected aren't as powerful, of course. So big pharma is quite powerful, and the corporations, I agree with you. If we allow them to make it so high that no one can afford, or it's arbitrary when and how supply and demand works, that always works into the favor of kind of a very ultra
group.
capitalistic, taking advantage of those who are truly sick, which I think we're.
I like the use of the word
repulsed by.
ultra there, because it's not a normal. So in a capitalist system,
Yeah.
So this is what's different there, right? An ultra insular group is controlling the resources because it's almost impossible. I would go one further. It's not just about the innocent people with diabetes. No, it's even the innovators who are unable to innovate because it's hundreds of billions of dollars and so many levels of legislation away that if you're not Eli Lilly, you're not going to get to do this unless Eli Lilly buys you. And so for them to control what kind of plane we get to fly in and what kind of drugs we get to have, there's no room for innovation anymore. This is beyond. And so, this is also, I hate to say it like this, but what is the biggest benefit to a company is like the right to try, right? Because the right to try then says, hey, these are people that will die without medicine. Sure, we can make this really expensive product from Eli Lilly, but maybe also there's alternatives. However, we've forbidden any company from researching these alternatives unless we have the right to try. So maybe that's a benefit. I don't know.
Eli Lilly had a $25 list pro, and I'm only learning this as
I
read.
saw Alyssa thinking. So if you ever have a thought, Alyssa, feel free to share it. I'll pause for a minute.
Well, it's interesting when you said prohibitive. It is so prohibitive. So why? I don't know how you fix it, but there should not only be 3 companies that then can only.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
really
to me, like
profitable.
actual capitalism to me wouldn't be that ultra capitalist thing you just said. It would be where a bunch of companies, a bunch of startups are able to compete to come up with new ideas.
Crony capitalism.
Right. Yeah. I would like to see less. I'd like to have less of this licensed exploitation and monopolistic group and more of everyone competing to make cheaper solutions. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you had Martin Shkreli on yet?
We haven't had him on yet, but you know who he's talking about, right, Alyssa? So actually, Winslow, why don't you give her a Shkreli pill really quick? Let's explain who Martin is. You've heard of him. He's the guy who made
Yeah, so he's the guy who hiked up insulin prices and went to prison for it. And
that's why he's got that smug look on his face in that shot.
Do you guys consider him a bad guy or a dishonest guy who maybe was doing something good? I don't know much about this situation.
Is he a Robin Hood?
Hot take. He might be actually someone who pointed out something corrupt in the system because he showed how corrupt the system was.
You might have every right to look that smug. I didn't mean that as
I don't even think he looks smug. He just looks like he's walking out of the room.
He looks sly as hell. Look at that shiftiness.
Well, he's definitely shifty.
That can go either way. It depends on what you're shifty about and why you have to be shifty. Some people have to be shifty for good reasons, you know.
Well, he knew he was doing what a lot of people were already doing, so he probably felt safe at least knowing that. He's like, honestly, they're gonna ream me for this, but at least I know like I'm not doing like a cardinal sin of life like a lot of people are doing what I just did, you know.
I hope the photographer got paid well for that shot.
Yeah,
it illustrates a lot in this single.
Pat himself on the back. It's like I'm taking a break for the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's so expressive.
Compressed spine. But I don't know. I think it's
like
a bad
he doesn't
idea to. Go ahead. Sorry.
He doesn't look defeated. He looks like he's going somewhere, and there's a slight smirk, and maybe that's why we think he looks arrogant in some way. But really, you have to have some kind of confidence when you're being challenged from all sides, and you have the rest of your life in prison to think about.
I get the feeling when the newspapers try to make you look like a bad guy, like when they try to make Martha Stewart look like the worst criminal ever, then clearly Martha Stewart upset some evil people. That's the way
she was scapegoated.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
She became a symbol. You know.
If he looks sadder, does he look more guilty? Or if he looks happier, does he look more guilty? Would we choose the opposite? It's kind of takes me back to Derrida, and I would like to interject that into everything with everything we're thinking about. Is Derrida had suggested, you guys are familiar with the Algerian philosopher? He said that we all have something we prefer to be true. We all have the first premise that we like to promote and we identify with. And he said, anytime you find yourself easily fitting into one category, the best way for you to review that category is to assume the opposite. and find your way back, is that the first thing we prefer is often shorting us of insight. So ask ourselves, just as a thought experiment, what might the opposite be? And then we'll be much more nuanced and explore that gray area rather than having a very black and white false dichotomy. So that's why I loved this concept of discussing what are pros and cons, is because we often I think many of us find ourselves checking off these boxes. Okay, that's a pro, that's a con, that's a pro. And we go down the list, and that's where we argue with others from. But if we were to reverse our perspective and discover the weaknesses to our arguments, not only does it strengthen the argument, of course, as we know, but it all through the Socratic method, but it becomes much more scientific. It becomes much more inclusive to, and also much more, I'd say, humble, because maybe we can just discard poorly memorized beliefs.
Brittany says, awesome to have all sides.
Partly memorized beliefs. Yes, I like that.
I was under the impression that I was jumping into a political debate of some sort. And so like that was the pitch that I received in a text message.
Andreas can't find like a non-inflammatory Trump supporter. Like all the Trump supporters we know are the first ones to just be like, go fuck, like go F yourself. Like go on.
No, my understanding is I'm going to talk to a Kamala supporter.
When you think you have to fight for something, you fight hard for it.
I want to be challenged. I want to hear something that's a super like positive thing about what the rationale is.
Well, let's try a couple of things. I'd like someone to try to tackle Project 2025 and everything else. One of the things on healthcare specifically was that he talks about trying to dismantle the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and he's been saying that he's going to dismantle and rebuild Obamacare into something else for years. That's what he did in his first 4 years. He's like, well, I can't get rid of Obamacare. I'm going to build something else. Well, if you got rid of Obamacare, we would have been a really, let's say it, like a bad situation. Like we needed to have it. It's not the best possible, least entropy, perfect system, but having nothing, having nothing is like Baghdad, Iraq.
It helped me a lot when I was
2001.
in my 20s.
Yeah,
I want to hear the positive thing. It's not Trump thing, but I want to hear a positive thing about Kamala. What do we got?
Say something positive about Kamala Harris. Dude.
I thought we were talking about price cap insulin. Yeah,
I know.
No, but I like.
If you want to talk about that though, I'm totally down. I just, this was what I was informed I was jumping into.
This is what you're getting into, and we have many categories to go through, which would take quite a bit of time. But public health is where we're at. Education may be next before we discuss labor, banking and the economy, women's health, immigration, and it goes on. And by the way, the magazine is all, this article from, this is what I haven't brought up yet, is all about Project 2025 and their plan regarding this.
Fashion sense. I like how.
When I hear Project 2025, I'm hearing something along the lines of like a bizarro. What's that guy who's founded the WEF? Klaus Schwab's The Great Reset, that book that he published. Like you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to talk about that's not a conspiracy theorist term. That's his
Project 2025 was created by the Heritage Foundation, which is the same people as a lot of Obama stuff, right?
Obamacare.
So
it was a component of Obamacare was incorporated from them.
Who are the Heritage Foundation?
Go ahead.
The Heritage Foundation puts out these kind of like wish lists for super rich people who have a certain political bent, and is it a status bend or is it? It's not that dissimilar from like what Agenda 21 was, which was world's top scientists getting together to come up with a strategy for how to deal with certain hardships they were predicting in the future. One of the problems we can know in hindsight, looking at what Agenda 21 was, even though a lot of this stuff went down the line to people's desks, like they had something presented, they don't know where it's necessarily coming from, but it was Gorbachev, world's top scientists being like, okay, we're going to have this potential disaster in the future. How are we going to mitigate that? But what's the problem is that these people exist within a certain paradigm, and it might be seem true in the moment, but as time goes by, there's Schopenhauer's 3 stages of truth. You know what I mean? Like we go from ridicule to opposing to accepting as self-evident. So it's like this process goes along. And so a lot of the things, if you revisit Agenda 2021, this was similar in the way that it was like almost like a wish list of what these people might actually like to see happen, because this was some of their idealism. Even that map down there that you can see of the United States, like this seems like such a conspiracy theorist thing, but this is published in Agenda 21. This is from direct snippet from the book here. And so how they're going to allocate the land and everything that they're planning on doing, but they didn't get all of this. Okay, like there's people who have all kinds of crazy things, and some of them have a lot of money, and they're like, can I buy that? They also want to buy people's minds. So that's my complaint around the way that a lot of super PAC stuff works for the the uniparty, is that they're literally like how much can we pay, like $10 million to Cardi B to go and say the opposite of what she was saying a week ago on Instagram. It's like, how much does it take? So it's like, and just that relationship to politics I see as very problematic.
So I would just point out that the heritage
Project 25, like why did they do it?
Right. So this is my pitch. I could be completely a little off here. Tell me. Yeah, Trump is not Project 2025.
Great.
He's not. He's not though. He's not. So there are some things in there.
This is what they want.
This is what old money is asking of him.
And he's the one most likely to instigate.
But he's not. And here's the reason. Well, I'll show you. Because essentially what Project 2025 is asking for the neocons to continue having power, where the neocons and the neoliberals are the statists, right? And the statists together, that's essentially this is why Dick Cheney's come out in support of Kamala Harris, because she's a prosecutor and she's a statist, and the alternative to the statists are the ANCAPs, right? This is why the Randists, the techno-weenies like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and all these things, that they've decided they don't really want a state that's in charge of them, right? But the statists, it's crazy because it used to be the left and the right, but basically it's the entire left and right state together saying, hey, if we don't have a state, there's no law and order. So it's law and order, or it's the mafia running Las Vegas. That's basically what Project 2025 is, a continuation of trying to say, hey, we could probably continue to have the Republican vote the way we used to control them in the Bush administration. But it's not true, because they don't have the same sway with Trump that they used to have. So the Democrats constantly talking about Project 2025 is as crazy as the Republicans talking about Agenda 21, right? Agenda 21 is not something the Democrats... How many Democrats do you know
what they said
that are
about
like preaching open borders? How many Democrats do you know are preaching open borders and all the things that Fox News says that they are? Like none.
Right, but you can go back
Trump
not long ago.
The bill. Trump killed the bill.
Yes.
You had Obama, you had Bill Clinton, and they were all really, really serious about illegal immigration. Do you remember?
Yeah, Hillary Clinton was against it.
By the way,
of course.
It's interesting what you said about Las Vegas, Andreas, because in Trump's rally in Nevada a couple of days ago, he was talking about, I think it was the Nevada governor, or it was the Las Vegas mayor, some politician in Las Vegas, and he was saying something along the lines of the politician was like the most powerful person, and it was something interesting to hear Donald Trump call someone like really powerful.
Yeah. If you have the most sovereignty in a place, and that's the thing about Las Vegas. It's interesting, actually. I'm not a hater. I can go to Mexico and be really impressed by the cartel's efficiency, right? There's no traffic in Acapulco. Do you know that? Like, there's human trafficking, but there's no pollution, Like, the idea of a government, an authoritarian, fascistic state that gets rid of all crime, that's something that you can imagine, like in Las Vegas. If you do something wrong and the mob doesn't like it and you end up buried in the desert, right? Yeah. There's efficiency to that. I understand that efficiency exists. It's just not necessarily the perfect efficiency. There's a reason why the state exists. And the state will say, okay, this is the most appropriate punishment for this crime. You can't just kill this person because they flipped you off, right? There's a limit to the amount of execution you can pull on somebody. So order is kind of cool. I'm sorry if I sound like... Well, I'm sorry if I sound like very senior.
Hey, if it weren't for order, we couldn't appreciate chaos, and vice versa. Because I get tired of order, of course, as we know, and chaos becomes very cumbersome. In which case, order reestablishes our right to just wake up in the morning and say, "Let's have a little chaos tonight."
I don't know, man. I think the birth of tragedy, Nietzsche has a corollary for that, which is that if that order taken to the extreme just becomes chaos. So like it becomes problematic. Like you want a balance of the Apollonian and the Dionysian. Like Apollo's all structured, Dionysian is just Woodstock, you know. So it's like you have to have some of each, but it's argued that if order goes too far, that's the destruction of an empire, you know.
Do you read Robert Johnson with your or Hume, the way you said Dionysian? Really? Okay, I read the most phenomenal book called Ecstasy, and it was by Robert A. Johnson, who is kind of a Jungian psychologist and psychoanalyst who passed away recently.
I've read his book. I read his book on the dream in the underworld, and I read his book on I think Nike and
All right, well, how about
Charlie? You look familiar. I think I met you before in Santa Cruz.
It's probable.
All right, I think I met you before.
Hold on, I want to take this. I want to take this to another place. Wait, Alyssa's saying. Alyssa, what are you? What are you saying, Alyssa?
Oh, I was googling Apollonian because I thought of
Apollonian, Dionysian.
The qualities of society. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to bring up a question, the next one, because we talked about insulin, but since we're talking about things that we're interested in, psychedelics for veterans. How about that one? So I think it's really important to have post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, for all, but let's start with veterans.
Not ketamine.
Psychedelics for all mental illness.
I'm not down with ketamine though. I don't like ketamine.
Really, you don't want veterans to have ketamine? Why?
There's
huge. Who here's had ketamine? Raise their hand.
It's probably the most medically used one.
But, you know, generally,
ketamine is a veterinary drug.
I think there's a difference between like aesthetics and anesthetics. You know, like certain drugs make you feel more, and certain drugs kind of like make you feel less. But
yeah, so imagine you're a veteran. Let's say you're a veteran. Let's say you're a veteran, and your arm's been removed in a horrible incident where you sacrificed your arm for your country.
You get a lollipop.
Do you still not want that guy to have ketamine? Like,
better things than ketamine.
You get
There's,
fentanyl
morphine
in the
or
lollipop
something.
form.
No, morphine sucks, man. Because morphine is just a horrible addictive thing. There's a reason why the CIA wanted a non-addictive substitute for codeine.
Addictive too,
right?
Ketamine is not physically addictive. It can cause psychosis and brain lesions, but it's not physically addictive.
Okay, well at least it's
this all comes back to insulin too.
Do
you need ketamine or do you not? Do you need insulin or do you not? And
what I meant though is that you've got a lot of veterans who fought for our country. They're dealing with PTSD, and if we give them therapy alongside of a chemical that can help them deal with their PTSD, like you have a certain amount of serotonin or dopamine, you can process it. Alyssa, tell them.
Like 1 or 2 treatments, and like the results would be like 6 months at least, instead of taking an antidepressant with totally side effects, and it takes a long time to work. And they're not even that effective. I don't know the stats, but they're not. Antidepressants are not that effective.
Oh my God, I could tell you.
Do it in like 2 or 3
Can I ask a question? May I ask a question, please? About ketamine? Having done ketamine, ketamine lasts for a certain amount of time. It sneaks up, and then you have an hour. I don't know what benefits, may I ask, anyone who promotes its medicinal value occurs the next day or the following day. It seems to me to be quite something that comes on strong and wears off.
Some people have actually given injections of ketamine to give you
have a lot of issues going on. You can dissociate from those issues.
Some people do pseudo death where they actually experience an extreme experience of almost like ego death, and then they psychologically.
I
mean, I've done it, and as a critic of ketamine, I would say like. I mean, even as a critic, I would still say a big value is that it's a really good way to break down your ego. You know, because at some point you have to just let go, otherwise you're gonna have a really, really, really bad time.
It's an alternative to suicide, I think, because people feel like they died. Better. But wait, Alyssa
ads all the time being in.
Alyssa was about to explain because she actually said that they have treatments. You said where you're at.
They have like infusions where you go and you do a whole. I don't know if it's like over a day or a weekend, and one treatment can have months of effects.
Like the quality is like better. It's better than like
prepared and I'd pull it up and
it's better than like 30 treatments of therapy sometimes.
Psilocybin, even like MDMA, like any of these, they were never supposed to be scheduled substances. Some of them, especially
the horses, they must be doing pretty well. Wasn't it just designed for a simple tranquilizer? Yet we feel it has a psychosomatic and psychological benefit, or even a physical benefit. I don't know anything about that, and I would love to see if microdosing could
Okay, so
potentially
so long story short though, because we're not here to save the world, we're here to talk about issues like this. The issues of whether or not it sounds like you're for veterans and maybe other people even beyond that having access to alternative medicines and alternative than antipsychotics, antidepressants. And you'd like to see this research done, right? So this is an issue. Because on one hand, like it was the other night, Vance, who, you know, I always think of Vance as being this like terrifying Appalachian Marine who's anti-drugs because his mother took drugs. And if your mother was like nearly killed by fentanyl, you're probably going to be against drugs, and that's reasonable. But I mean, what shocked me was he was on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan convinced him that veterans should take psychedelics.
Oh,
and
shit.
He was he was just shocked, and he was like, "Whoa, you mean that this could be helpful to veterans? I'm a Marine. Facts." It's a huge deal, right? So that's really, to me, a big election swear that somebody would be in, like that the potential vice president of the United States is for psychedelic research is a pretty cool thing to me. I'm like for that.
Hey, can I share a little story really quick?
Well, I just want to say the alternative, which is that Kamala Harris spent decades as a prosecutor arresting people who use cannabis and fought against veterans using MDMA and against MAPS. It was a big deal,
right?
But I know, but
that's a leap. I see why.
I remember, because
doesn't believe in that anymore.
It's something that really hit me hard though. Is growing up in Santa Cruz, we have a group called the MAPS, Multi Associational Psychedelic Studies, Multiplanary Association for Psychedelic Studies, right?
The name
and they give MAPS gives.
they gotta change that.
MAPS was giving MDMA to veterans, and Kamala Harris was actually working to shut them down for years, right? And this was a big problem.
Don't go so far left. There's a lot more at stake than psychedelic drug experimentation, which may benefit. And there's a lot of research to be done. But this is so.
But veterans. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. Veterans, though, are one of my major priorities.
Okay.
Okay.
I understand.
Right.
I've spoken on a panel with Maps.
Give the veterans
at Burning Man. With
what was your story, Charlie?
What's the guy's
or
name?
Charles, sir.
Do it yourself and sell some yourself.
Oh my god!
I was curious about your story, Charles.
Oh, Charles! You keep saying Charles. My name.
What do you want me to call you? Sorry, I don't know.
In fact, Charles. I keep getting envelopes. David Charles. I'm like, my last name's Plate. What?
I thought. God, I'm so bad at this. Please forgive me. You can call me whatever you want from now on.
Oh no, I just had an applicable thing.
I don't mean. I mean it out of respect. I don't use your name.
At the last place I was living, and I had people like coming over and they'd talk really loud about psychedelic stuff. And so at one point he lived at the house. So he was like down below and there's like steps going up and like people would just, and I was like, I have to have this conversation with him. So and he was an old school veteran. And so I brought it up to him. I was like, just so you know, this goes on. He's like, my friend was over here the other night. We had, whatever. I was explaining how things go on. And he was like, when I was in Vietnam and I killed a lot of people. And so he was actually in the Navy, but he flew in a plane that dropped bombs on people. And he was like, and a lot of people I served with killed a lot of people. And I have friends that are very close with who we served together. And they've told me that psychedelics have been really helpful to them. And so he leaned in and he goes, I don't know what you've been through, but if it's working for you and you're not hurting anybody, I had a problem in the 60s. I don't have a problem now. And
we've been fighting. Who's been fighting for psychedelics and medicinal drug use all along? Obviously, conservatives, right?
Yeah, I talked about.
Come on, guys. Let's be real.
Well, yeah, actually, because libertarian Goldwater conservatives were fighting for your rights to, like Jeffersonian Republicans back in the day. That was their whole thing, right? And Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater. Hillary Clinton was a conservative Republican Goldwater libertarian who was fighting for your rights for your body at that time. Well, I think the world switched sides a few times since then.
I agree with that and how it happened. Interesting conversation.
We're on drugs really made shit fucked up. Like we're on drugs.
That's right. Thank you.
Really true.
Right.
Very wrong.
Wait, what was fucked up? I missed it. Sorry.
The war on drugs.
Personal freedom is what that is.
Everything.
I think if you can't drive on drugs, you shouldn't fight a war on drugs.
Without what Andreas said, having benchmarks. Any attempt to improve things for the future requires you to ask how it's doing. You have to review. And if you're not reviewing and improving, you're certainly not conducting an experiment.
completely make everything Schedule 1. You cannot
so
do anything with any.
That's crazy.
Therapeutic.
So when we have
100%
adjustments are required and tweaking is required to any plan, especially the more complex it becomes. So when things fail, they fail for particular reasons, and it's often due to a particular oversight. And
total oversight.
I mean, I said that so lightly, but yeah, I agree with you, of course. So what was the oversight is all I meant. And then in which case, why does the war on drugs, why is it so misguided? And then in which case, what we're discussing now is what benefits are there and what can be overlooked if your mindset is it's only one direction, being negative.
Is that positive? Is that positive and negative governance? Because the idea that drugs are, the idea that anything is evil in nature inherently is wrong. It's what we do with things. So the idea that there are
the science behind, first of all, marijuana, or like many of the things, was always there. And it just took, I don't know how many years to be like, wait, I'm sorry. We have like receptors for these things. And wow, they really help and do a lot of things, but it was Schedule 1. So nope, shut down and criminalized. So then I can't even get into it. It's like a whole thing.
Who fought against research regarding benefits of drugs for so long? My only question is, for what reason was that occurring?
So
there are multiple people working on it, and they just didn't want the public
to be.
Don't think I'm the one saying so either.
I'm not even kidding. It was crack, and then it was.
Oh, well, that's the problem. Well, let's talk about the problems with Joe Biden. I'm sorry, but the first time I ever heard of Joe Biden was when he was leading the freaking Rave Act, and he said he wanted to arrest my friends. So he said, arrest the promoter. He was as clear as day. And I was like, who is this Footloose guy? I was so that's freaking terrible. He's like, we know where these parties are happening. They're happening in warehouses and they're happening
right
in the
before
desert.
my birthday.
When he said the desert, I was like, Burning Man? You want to arrest the promoters of Burning Man because people do drugs at one of the most freaking like healing, transformative, freaking like, come on, man. It's just the most anti-Woodstock thing I can think of.
Hey, David, do you know Timothy Walton? Have you ever been to Unscrews?
Yes.
Does that ring a? Okay.
Yeah,
got it.
The name rings a bell. I've been to multiple. I put on some of the booths.
I just wanted to say
this is it. I think that also cannabis is an issue that goes back even further than Joe Biden. It goes back to the 20s because you have the Marijuana Hemp Tax Act,
and they were like, you can't.
So it's pharmaceutical companies that used to be opium traders over the China Seas, right? These slave trader families that became opium families, but also the Mellon, Anslinger, DuPont nylon schema, because they created these new products that were to replace hemp. So they had to make these things illegal, and William Randolph Hearst had control over the old growth redwood trees, and he could use that to make paper. And if you had hemp, then you could make your own newspapers, which meant you could control public opinion. So you actually, the destruction of hemp was actually censorship in a lot of ways of public opinion.
Totally.
I like,
Fun times. What about do you guys want to do inflation? Do you want to do Hunter Biden?
I'm just telling you, like, how did we end up with Hunter Biden?
Why do you have your list, my friend? You go through like all your hate list.
Yo, can I also?
I don't have hate in my heart.
Still wanted to hear what I think about Kamala Harris.
My personal life, like my life.
Everybody breathe. Everybody breathe. Everybody breathe. I want Winslow to talk. Winslow had a compelling thing there.
I've been waiting.
You said, David, earlier you wanted someone to tell you something good about Kamala, and I'll give you that.
Thank you.
So she sets precedent for all women. So I guess at some point in the future, you could say we have a completely fair world where anyone can do anything, whether you're a woman, man, whatever you want to be.
Well, that's true anyway. But I'm hearing the argument that because she's a woman, I've heard that one. I need better.
She's
than
inspiring.
I don't think that she's using that either.
That's not what anyone is saying.
No, I'm talking about specifics. I want to hear policy proposals or something that she's already done. Like, it's what I don't. I'm not.
I'm sure a lot of people vote based just on that too.
Because if we're gonna talk like Bernie or Kennedy, like sheepdog Bernie, he called himself sheepdog. I didn't know what a political sheepdog was. I had to look it up. It's somebody that gets a party motivated, knowing that they're going to drop out and leave people with the lesser of two evils. and I didn't know what a Pied Piper
what did
candidate
you learn
was
about
until I saw the email
Hunter?
from friggin' John Podesta to the DNC outlining their strategy for the 2016 election, where they referred to Trump as a Pied Piper candidate that they would direct the media to substantiate as a viable candidate, so that they could use him to keep pointing at him and say, look how awful he is, to make themselves look better. So that was a gamble that they made. I don't think Trump thought he was going to win that first time. I'm pretty sure that Trump thought he was going to have some kind of radio show like Sirius XM or something, where he talks shit all through Hillary's
even in his rally tonight.
presidency.
That's what he.
And
That's what.
look at
That would have been a
his
great way to make money.
inauguration day. He's so bummed out. He's like, it actually happened. And so now I think he really does want to be president. And I think he's like, I can actually do
Why
this.
would he want to be president again? That is my main.
I'm just this is my assessment. You can think what you
I'm
want
with you,
about
Alyssa.
Dave, did you hear that story about when Obama was like, I think addressing, he was having one of those fancy dinners where like celebrities pay like thousands of dollars for a ticket at, and Donald Trump was there, and he was making jokes. He was like, yeah, Donald Trump said this, but he'll never be president though. And I bet Donald Trump was in that room saying, oh yeah, all right, we'll see.
Yeah, we have a friend who did a whole like series on that called Hindsight 2020, and the focus of it is that dinner, as like you can see the entire future here and where he goes with it, because it's about the birth certificate thing. So he like there it is. Yeah. So he's like, not only do I have my birth certificate, Obama says I have video of my birth, and he shows the footage of the Lion King and the lion, where he holds up the freaking Lion King. And then right after that, it was Osama bin Laden got killed. And like, it was a crazy weekend, all the stuff that happened.
Yeah,
right?
remember when Osama bin Laden got killed, they kept saying Obama's been killed because they couldn't say his name right on TV.
Right.
Like, I mean,
Hey, guys.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Do you mind to have just 20 seconds to ask so we can all participate, and also to answer your question, David? Which subject for you, David, is most important that you would like to hear both policies regarding? And I'm going to give you 4 to choose from. Then in which case you're the one promoting our direction, and we can all participate.
If you have another one of your own, that's also cool.
No, it's also back to that article, which is from BBC, why I care about outside sources looking at U.S. politics, and why it's so interesting to me to be oriented in that direction is that I don't feel as though I have anyone I'm indebted to in the United States, other than the well-being for as many people as possible. I know it's very John Stuart Mill, but so let's just and if I ask myself, maybe there's one person who's more special than others. I don't necessarily go down that route easily. So we would have to talk about it. But I wanted to ask you, David, inflation, and it's also a quick thing. But you have to choose inflation, taxes, abortion, or immigration.
Please pick inflation. Let's talk about inflation.
You have a vote in your favor.
Taxes?
Inflation.
Did you say
like
can we? You want to?
Inflation and taxes are the same thing.
Come on, just a little
inflation. I want to talk about abortion because I'll tell you something. Like,
we're gonna do all 4. I was planning to do all 4.
Our fucking money
because as a man, but we do have a woman present, and so we have representation.
We have 2.
And I would like.
It's 2. Too. I'm at my neighbor best friend.
What do you say, Chris?
Okay.
Abortion or inflation first?
I have real questions here. So I would like
abortion. All right.
Actually, you know what? Let's save inflation. Let's do abortion first because inflation is really big for me. I want to talk about why our money sucks now. And
we'll circle back. Let's let David do his thing. David, ask some questions. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is something that I've seen that I see as problematic. I see bills that are being presented that are on the table that basically where you're looking at abortion rights, and I'm 100% for abortion rights. I happen to agree with Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she had her concerns about Roe versus Wade, in part because Roe versus Wade was all about medical privacy. And what I'm seeing a lot of, especially looking at vaccine mandates and all this stuff, I'm seeing a lack of that as a value of medical privacy. I can tell you from personal experience, hospital stuff, I have my concerns there, but that's not really the question I really want to go to. I want to ask about the fact that when you look at this bill, it's got a it's compounding two things into itself. So you also have trans stuff trans rights issues as it relates to children and puberty blockers and surgeries and I'm at the same place as Kennedy with that. Like my feeling is that adults can do all kinds of things that they want to do with themselves, and like I don't feel like the caring about children and protecting children is like just a right-wing talking point. Like, you know.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. It's a big deal. You're right. It's
so yeah. Can I read that little quick thing?
Wait. There was a question for Alyssa there. Was that?
Yeah, well, I want to know as it relates to when people are talking about their concerns about Donald Trump and abortion and leaving it to the states and all this stuff. Like Roe versus Wade was vulnerable to begin with, and from what I could get, this was my experience and my issue when Obama was running. He kept saying that he was going to codify Roe versus Wade as one of his first orders of action. We Democrats had the majority in the House. Like I've always in the past rooted for the Democrats, but I'm seeing some serious problems with censorship and a lot of core issues that were the values.
But what's the question about Roe versus
the Democratic Party, including criticism of big pharma and that rotating door with the regulators of corporations and the corporations themselves that they're supposed to regulate? Like it's so apparent.
But what's the question? Is there a question there about like?
Is there a bright side to how Kamala can give the thing that she's promising if that's the way that it's presented?
What do you say, Alyssa?
I think
I don't even know what you have. What you can.
It's created a whole.
Yeah, it was
a can of worms. Yeah, straight up.
If you leave it,
I wanted it to be very specific.
Wait, let it go.
Now you have people from one state trying to go to another. You can't expect someone that needs something to like go to another state, and you can't expect to prosecute doctors or pharmacists or anyone to do something that's actually in the benefit of the patient. There's so many stories.
Right, these are all bad things for us
certain
to
states
lose.
now where if you don't have a parental consent, unless you're up to 18, like they can't do anything. There's no medical care that can be given, or that they'll just hold off. They will not give medical care. There's like 8 states. I can't remember which one. But
why is abortion connected to the question of what a woman is?
I don't even understand what we're discussing. What is the issue?
My issue is that if you present a bill to have new policy, if you're including policies from a whole other matter that people can have different views of, what does it mean to be a liberal? What does it mean to be a Democrat? Because my understanding is that we had an acknowledgement of like nuance, and we're able to like not like that. To me, that doesn't feel like real democracy. It doesn't.
So that's the sad thing is that it would be cool if people could have. Alyssa brought up the point just now that if you were super wealthy and you could just go wherever you wanted, whenever you wanted something, you had cafeteria rights and privileges, right? I could fly to the state that lets me do this, and I could fly to the state.
Maybe to live.
I have to be really rich though. If I was a diabetic. If I was a diabetic in Minneapolis, I can't go to another town if I can't get my drugs. So this idea that we don't have harmonized rights.
Good point.
Is then in the same states, they don't really like Medicaid. The Medicaid.
It's unrealistic to demand that of people.
Have the resources. So then if everybody has to have, there's no options. There's also no support.
Mm-hmm.
Who's paying for all
Would you disagree with this, guys? This is really what I wanted to ask. It's interesting how we all have to slow down, I think, a little bit. And it's interesting to me too, how much I may have memorized a script. Like I wrote an essay yesterday and I prepared it for tonight. And I'm going to read you 4 pages and just hit you over the head. And like, it's too overwhelming. It's too overwhelming for me. I can't even, I never, that's why you guys see me ask questions constantly, because with a question, at least it's engaging and it allows others to respond. And then it goes back and forth. But it worries me when someone doesn't have enough questions to ask.
I think we got pretty far with this idea, though. We made it clear the Roe versus Wade situation. Sorry, I hear like a buzzing.
It created a weird.
Oh, it's weird. Sorry. So
But
what I had. Okay,
Well,
so
I'm gonna mute for just a second because I hear this like buzzing going on. All right, what happened with Roe versus Wade is they said it's not a universal federal constitutionalist decision that's clear. So it makes more sense to leave this up to each state, and that's kind of a strange thing to do because this is about human rights, and the Constitution defines what are individuals and what are human rights. And also, we could decide, I think, basically based on these rural states saying, hey, if we had more born taxpayers and voters, then our state would look, it would be, it would embellish the numbers a bit, right?
We got one woman in the conversation. She needs to be unmuted like the whole time. Like she should, FYI, especially when we're talking about this kind of thing for real. Just saying.
All right, that's something to say.
Yeah,
I want to hear what he has to say.
After living in Texas,
as well as Alyssa.
We need to give Alyssa her opportunity.
I have a friend in Texas that
because you look like you want it, and I think you should have it.
I would like to speak.
Yeah,
I was at the protest.
I feel like there's
in Texas
cheerleaders there.
for
They're
those
trying
rights,
to.
And
cheerleader, that's Andrea.
I'm sorry.
I don't know who anyone watches anything, even in the debate or the stories that are told when it's been left up to the states. I don't understand how people don't think like, ooh, this is like it was not a move forward. What new country just like other like foreign countries are like being more progressive, and we like went backwards.
Yes. I agree with you. And unfortunately,
let her finish.
But it's like
Republicans and Democrats, but I blame Obama largely because we had the majority in the House. We had the opportunity to codify Roe versus Wade, but the Democrats keep using it as a carrot on the stick to get votes. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not saying that's all it comes down to, but that's an element.
I don't think so.
What's that?
You could have done something to like. It could never be.
To codify Roe versus Wade? Yeah.
What happened was they didn't let Obama put a Supreme Court judge.
Huh?
Yeah, basically, if he had the time, if Obama had the time to put in a Supreme Court judge, if Obama was able to put in a Supreme Court judge, that was,
that's a very good point. Thank you, Alyssa. That's good. That's true.
Look at how blocked Obama's judge choice because he was still president, and the Democrats.
We got Mitch McConnell's on his. He's done. He's on his way out right now. So goodbye, Mitch.
Yes.
It's been grand.
Trump got 3.
Yeah. Hey, did you notice that when Mitch McConnell did his first freeze up? Remember, he was like having those freeze ups. Did you catch what he was saying right before he froze up that first time? About he said that the NDAA was coming along smoothly. I think a lot of people, when they heard that, maybe they didn't catch, like they thought it was like some bureaucratic jargon or whatever. No, he was talking about the National Defense Authorization Act, saying that we were giving billions and billions more dollars to freaking Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan all at the same time. And it was like I'm this is an unpopular view maybe, but I've watched the video a lot, and what it looks like to me was that man actually had a moment of conscience, because he was like, yeah, it's coming along smoothly, World War III, hello. And he's just like, what the frick are we doing? That's what it looked like. And everyone called it a senior moment. Meanwhile, Biden at that time was having all kinds of senior moments, and we were being gaslit if we freaking talked about it. You know?
Can I, before you pass on this topic with the abortion, can I say something on it?
Yeah.
So I was living in Texas at the time, in Denton, Texas, and this was like it was a college town. It was a more kind of liberal town in our big red state, but you had a lot of conservative Christians, and so I was at these protests, and it was mostly just kind of Christian 20-something-year-old men out there just yelling at them, that they're, mostly just very Christian ideology about it. Yeah. But in Texas, from what I've heard, and I've had friends there who told me about like needing to get abortions and stuff. I'm not telling anybody's names, but from what I knew, from the law in Texas was going to be that, or maybe is, that if you get an abortion and your neighbor finds out about it and they rat on you, they get paid. It's like if you report this and you find this, like, so we used to have, if you find out who shot a cop, you get like a $500, $1,000 reward. They would get a reward. And even if they went out of state and got the abortion and they got arrested. So even if they left the state and it was legal in another state, they still got in trouble for it, from what I've heard.
It's not even about abortion.
I think it should be deemed unconstitutional.
It's about what happens if your have a medical emergency and have to have something done.
Yeah, no, I have a friend who
And
can't
too
get
far,
pregnant.
and you can't get it. And women
Yeah,
are.
no, I have a
actually
friend who will
dying.
die if she
It's
gets
insane.
pregnant and she wasn't allowed to get it.
You
Yes.
lose the ability to have children ever again because you waited, and no one can treat you because it's illegal, and you can be prosecuted.
No, I know. I have friends who did, which I consider that should be, it just should be deemed unconstitutional to infringe on anyone's personal autonomy in the first
Well,
place. So that shouldn't
isn't
be
this all
anything
going
the
towards the
state or the
pill?
federal
The
government
abortion
should be able
pill?
to decide at all.
Isn't this all going to be a pill?
So Trump's
Are we gonna be
whole position
requiring
on that
surgery?
is that they're
It's
harvesting
Because it
babies.
created the gray areas. It created
Let's-
the gray areas.
Let's take it. Let's take
Created
it.
gray areas in every state, and the gray areas suck
Abortion
when
is
it comes
natural.
to women's health. There's no gray area.
Yeah.
You have to be able. There is a gray area, but you have to be able as a doctor to do what you need to do with your medical professional.
That's kind of the thing here, right? So, like, a Hippocratic oath should protect a doctor
And they can't
protecting a
undo it.
patient. But is
Yeah.
that true? Is that really true? Because
I
if a
believe that
doctor,
too.
I feel like if a doctor is a doctor just has to say that they were
Unconstitutional
protecting the
No.
Hippocratic
To
oath.
infringe on personal autonomy.
You can't. You can be prosecuted at certain states. Also, they have to sign in certain states now if you're under 18 because of the transgender like scary thing.
Should
I think
laws prevent doctors from treating others to save lives?
They are there right now.
Well, no. See, that's
Should
the
they?
thing. What you have there is you have people saying that this
Because of
baby
political
is a
reasons?
life and that they're protecting the baby's life. However, so is the
Or the
mother.
woman's? I
And
read a lot
so-
about women dying.
That's what I'm trying to say. So
Yeah.
a doctor, if a doctor is a doctor, then that means that they've taken the Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath is not to some proxy person, such as the baby. The Hippocratic Oath is to the patient. So in no circumstance should a doctor in any state, if we're talking about the United States, no doctor in any state should be in trouble for protecting their patient above the fetus.
And
Even in a state that is a Christian right state, they should be able to say that the Hippocratic Oath was to protect their patient and that their priority, it'd be like telling a robot that they protected one life over another life, drowning in a
How
car.
come it doesn't have a birthday?
It's a trolley
Or
problem. Yeah.
There shouldn't be anything,
necessary transportation if you're going to be getting abortions, because let's play devil's advocate for a second. Maybe some hospitals and maybe some people don't want to give abortions because it's their religious belief or whatever
That's fine.
reason, right?
That's a devil's
So-
advocate. Sure.
Okay.
and maybe the majority of people in a state believe that, right? But the people in the state who need an abortion should have the access that they need to get the abortion to
This
save
is so
their
so
health.
I think
basic.
you should just get it if you
it's
want
like
to.
this is
a
so
war that's unreconcilable on its own terms because people feel so strongly on the two extremes. And so that's why you had to have compromise. And that's why Roe versus Wade was pretty good in that way, because it had that whole thing about late term abortions. And they cut out the late term abortions. It was a good compromise. Everyone was happy. And then certain hospitals kept on pushing for late term abortions. And then there was it got
Wait,
bad.
Alyssa, what was
How many
Alyssa-
people were actually getting to their late term and not know that they were pregnant?
Animals
Like,
do it all the time.
Wait, Alyssa's about to say something. What did you say?
Well, no, there's no I'm just gonna late term that's not it. That's for medical reasons. Like that is the only.
It's a financial
Yeah.
burden.
No, you find out. No, you find out. You find out. Listen. Hold on. Let me just say this. My mom was an OBGYN, so my mom did not do abortions, but she would tell a lady if her baby had any health issues. And sometimes mothers don't want to have a baby that's going to be a vegetable or Down syndrome or a lot of these issues.
Like
But that's-
animals kill their own.
That's not the only.
Effective.
That's not the only reason. There's other times where it can literally harm the mother to have the child, and they could die having the child. Okay, so in this
Yes,
particular,
and they
in this
do.
particular circumstance, though, a lady was not fully aware until far later because of some clerical error that her baby was going to be born vegetative, and so she decided to have a late stage abortion. Right, and it was a big deal in California to have to fly to a doctor who would and could do this safely and ethically. So it's not like, oh man, people are just rushing around trying to get rid of the, you know what, 8 months in,
they're not.
never
Like-
mind.
They're
Like,
not.
no, that's not how that's going, right? Like,
No,
we
it's
pretend
a
less.
bit of a no true Scotsman, because you have a
Always
thing where
a
you
horrible
could say this
situation.
never happens, and it does happen.
Can you
So
imagine how
it's like-
crazy? All right, fair enough. That I mean, the phenomenological diversity. There's got to be someone out there who really wants to wait till the 8th month to decide they want. But that is a unicorn. I'm sorry, that is not
I
normal.
agree with everything that you've said so
If
far.
you haven't
Alyssa.
decided by then,
How
Is
many
Trump
people
trying
get
to-
to
is Trump trying to like give more
ninth
freedom to
month
states
and
to
don't
allow
know that
more
they're
restrictions
pregnant?
to abortion?
Sorry.
I just
What's
want to
that?
know, like, as far as the candidates are concerned, is like Trump trying to like give more power to the states, which will mean
Yeah.
that
Trump
Very
is
good.
for Trump is reinforcing Ginsburg's decision to remove the Federalist Roe v. Wade, and instead of rowing or waiting, that we let each state decide for themselves, which is the quilting system.
Complete shit show.
The
complete
problem with-
shit show.
The problem with doing that is that it's not admitting the honest truth. It's like either you admit that a fetus is alive or it's not. You say it is or it is not. If you believe this, you do. If you don't, you don't. But regardless, we're gonna have to start talking about women who are dying. You know, it's like there's no like you know.
Government involvement, saying that there's no federal protection means the spin is that the government's saying what can't be done by states, but then the states get to decide how individuals and human beings basically raise families, and we're going to.
A woman should be allowed to decide.
Can I just point out something that
What's best for her future, and not only her future, but the future of society and people.
Okay, New Testament religious people who are like super against abortion or against abortion,
Like,
you know,
there's a
like,
Old Testament, and there also is No Testament.
Let me just drop this.
Okay.
There's no mention of it from Jesus. Okay, Jesus doesn't get into that. Okay, into that specific issue. You have the papacy and all of that. If you're going to talk Old Testament, life begins with breath. It's in the book of Genesis. It's like it's as
Obviously.
basic as you get.
Not with
It's the
electrical
spirit.
activity at like 6.
So like
Also,
when you say
that doesn't
inspiration,
quite-
like that you're breathing. It's the same. You have the same language. You know.
What about the umbilical cord? Isn't that breathing beforehand? And isn't that kind of who defines or so? I really think it's responsible and respectful to ask what decisions will require our decision making for the future. Sometimes someone's not ready to have a child, in which case it seems to me very what would you say? Sorry. Overlooking the damage done if a child is born into not only a place of poverty, but maybe an abusive household. What do you think?
They are not. There's not a lot of support. I don't think.
I want to hear what your friend is saying too.
Support.
Clearly,
of, like,
somebody wants to jump in on this.
Me?
She's right. She's right over there.
Yeah.
Also, inflation next. Inflation for Chris, because
Oh,
Chris is
geez,
I
waiting.
want to fucking like. I mean, you can only
Next.
You can only, you can only talk
What,
about
like-
abortion so much to the point where
I know. I agree. I totally
Yeah,
agree.
Also, wait, can I say
Irreconcilable.
something?
it's very
Oh my
clear
God.
cut. It's
Wait,
very
wait.
clear cut as to
What's
which
Alyssa
candidate
say?
feels about what. It's just
I shouldn't.
What?
What do you say?
Oh, come
I
on.
was only going to bring up transgender.
Yeah.
I was
Total
in Wisconsin
chaos.
at my cabin, and
No.
all of these freaking commercials kept coming on, and it was so fake. Kamala wants everybody to get. It was like, come on, everybody wants.
Yeah. Really? Kamala wants everyone to kill their babies.
I know,
Wow.
transgender,
Who would
no,
believe
it's-
that?
Kamala
Alright,
wants everyone
yeah.
to get a new.
And then who would? See, that's my thing.
Oh, I don't know if you're catching that. That's completely by design. I hope you know that.
Sure.
That, like that whole setup is to infuriate, so as to like substantiate yourself as the more mature, the better. It's to play on ego. Like that's in the
It's to infuriate everybody.
Programming, yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
To infuriate those when it's not true,
Yes.
and to infuriate those who might believe it's true,
Yeah, it's
and who.
sensationalism. It's
You know,
sensationalism.
do you know,
That
do
is
you know,
so true.
do you know what's
Yeah.
targeted
It's
at?
true.
You know what's targeted at? You know what's,
That's
you know,
why this-
it's targeted at
why
the people
I'm-
that they're worried aren't going to vote for either one of them. I was about to say vote for Vodka. There you go.
that's
No, they
Yeah.
want it's targeted towards people that
I'm
were
recovering
not.
alcoholic. Sorry. No.
It's
I know
targeted
what-
towards RFK supporters. It's targeted towards Jill Stein supporters. It's targeted towards anybody who's not alleged with one or the other, with the system, with the red and blue. If you're at least if you're cheering for the football teams, they're okay with you. That's what those ads are for. They're trying to
Are
get you
we
to cheer.
against? Do we think abortion should be outlawed? Or should we allow states to do so on behalf of women and all their citizens?
I'm a big fan of using it as time travel, self-defense time travel. It should
It's
be
one or the other. Or do we think it's a human right? Because in which case there's so many more complications and complex reasons why it should be. As I can't even believe Americans are having this conversation. To me, it has been we've been steered away from what is rational
that's kind of
into
my
a new debate,
issue with
and that is
about it.
radicalization.
I've,
No,
every time,
and I'm sorry.
the fact that they bring it up every 4 years.
Things. Like that's the discord.
Well, in my opinion,
much
ideally, I don't think it
irrationality
should
in
matter
some
whether
people.
abortion is
Sorry, I'm
legal or
trying to, like,
illegal.
Yes, what?
irrationality.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
should.
like,
You don't think
all
so? Sorry, what were you saying? Sorry.
I think ideally it shouldn't matter if abortion is legal or illegal. I feel humans should really, I guess, take self-accountability into account. And it's like all of this debate is under the assumption that humans just can't control themselves and they just have to like fuck like animals, right? That's basically what we're saying is like,
because there's a difference between
just because we think that humans can't fucking control their sexuality and they're just going to get pregnant without meaning to all the fucking time,
which is a different kind of thing than we've been talking about, which is people
Mom
that
and
have
dad said
genetic
it,
issues, or if it's a genetic issue, or that it's going to be dangerous for the mother to have the child. But there are situations where the way Fox News presents it, it's just
Andrew
that
just
people
said
are having.
also it's no one's business.
How did Fox News present?
That's why I'm at too.
I think people are presenting it like.
Hold on, I want to hear what Andreas said. He was saying Fox News is presenting.
I feel like the
something.
way Fox News presents it is that people have abortions just recreationally.
Yes,
all the time.
Exactly.
For
Exactly.
fun. All
And
the
they
time for fun.
literally
That's what we
have
call a
them
straw
like
man.
36 weeks.
Yeah. Right.
To do it,
David.
And that's never happened.
Yeah, I feel like most of the people I know have had an abortion.
No one.
Granted,
Nothing
I'm a
good
little
something.
older than I used to be, but the people who I knew, it was like a Degrassi episode. It was like, oh my god, like this horrible thing. I loved him,
My
but he
so-called
turned out
life.
he turned out to be a vampire, you know. And then like I loved him, but he jumped off a bridge on LSD, and now he's in the like. There's
That's how they treat so many subjects.
Yeah.
We're all jumping off the deep end because someone is having a sexual transition. In which case, the trans are taking over. I just mean sometimes the scare tactic falls flat. That's all.
I'm more concerned. I'm more concerned because of the shattering of the Roe v. Wade than I think a lot of people are, because I see I think more than even you, surprisingly, because the way I look at it is pharmaceutical companies aren't afraid of this. The more states where it's illegal to get an abortion, the more your product's going to sell online. And you're going to see companies making way more money taking abortion pills that they're not legally allowed to buy et cetera. You're going to see an advancement of better living through chemistry. And also, it's cheap. I'm just saying, let's say you live in a Bible Belt state where it's hard to get a drug. It could be marijuana. It could be abortion pills. Right? It's amazing how you can control people and how much you can get out of people if they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing about this. It's not gonna stop people from buying abortion pills. It's going to maybe normalize it in a weirder way. It's gonna maybe make that's ironically gonna be in the states where it's illegal.
I've been saying this for years, man.
Good point,
The future of abortion is all about the pills. And like that's totally a thing, man. I'm sorry. It's like you have the morning after pill or whatever. You're gonna have it's already begun. So,
my whole point has always been
you have a black market produced for abortion pills. That's an obvious issue. Like people, if you're not going to remove yourself,
I know it creates more crime. It creates more black market opportunity, no doubt.
Yeah. It's problematic for sure, but in certain ways, and
because the complexity is overlooked.
Maybe that's for the best. What do I know? I'm just,
I think that's a great insight too. Is the complexity of the issue is overlooked because of the idealistic. Is it really moral or is it not? We have to admit, people who are so black and white about it, if they refuse to, as I said about Derrida earlier, ask what is who is harmed most by my assumption that this only benefits those who I want it to, are they apathetic to those to the real life situations that occur because of
I think
this
a lot
policy?
of people are deaf. A lot of people are tone deaf.
I don't think they hear it or they don't even believe
I agree.
No, what it is, there's an old book called The Screamers, and you can find the rationale for a lot of this and that, and it's actually really hard to find online now. But the idea is, it's a concept where if you see something so horrific that you witness something and you're like, oh my God, and you see how you're perceptual experience. Like, this is so horrifying. You think
Yeah.
that if just people knew, if they saw, that they would change, that they would just say, oh my God, you're right. And so they'll get louder and louder to try and alert to people to what they perceive as a big problem. So it's a visceral experience that people have. It's like it's somatic. So it's like a somatic experience.
Visceral
it's imbuing, yeah. So it happens a lot just with, you know, any kind of fanaticism. Really, you're going to be incorporating that idea that, like, I see the horror. You have to know. You know, it's.
Do you mind I share the quickest anecdote? And it's by someone who spent time in a concentration camp. It's Wiesel, I think is his last name, but it's a book called Night. And please, anyone. Look at it. It's a short novel, and he brings, and to your point, David, to your point, and to everything that we're discussing. See, sometimes I'm just reminded of these things. Is that this person, pretty early in the novel, he's describing his real life encounter with what is the reality that your village is soon going to be annexed, I think is the right way to say it, by the German army.
Oh, so it's
the German army are the Nazis, mates. And also, what was the reaction by those in the village? A Jewish settlement, yeah? In, I believe, Hungary is where he's writing from. And so there's this
Jewish as a pejorative or as an adjective? Sorry.
No, I'm using this as a human condition thought. It has nothing to do with Judaism. Hear me out, and then let's discuss actually how it may, because I think it does. Obviously, I wouldn't be referencing if it
national, ethnic, or religious. What do we got?
Long story short, 30 seconds if you can, is that in this village there was one insane man. Everyone in the village thought was insane for saying, the Nazis are coming, they're going to take your homes, they're going to put you into concentration camps, and if you don't believe me, you'll see what happens. And they all, because it's so horrifying to contemplate the future of this consequence, it's much easier to label the liar, Jacob the liar, the insanity man. Right. And then he was outcasted from the village, and they would rather see him die. Now, also, the self-deception, and I'm almost done, pardon, but the self-deception is enacted where in the village, this author, Eli Wiesel, I can't remember it, but he acknowledges and witnesses how instead the people would rather think of one person as a liar and as insane than they would confront the reality of what is happening. Now, then the Nazis come and they say, hey, we need you to leave your village. We need you to get on these trains and we need you to go somewhere. And then the villagers were discussing, they're keeping us safe because they know war is coming to our village. And if we go somewhere else, we can trust them because they wouldn't do this otherwise. And there's one crazy guy again saying, everybody, you're going to your doom. And they basically killed him before they would acknowledge the reality of the situation.
Right. They forced villagers to sign agreements to Hitler's main doctrine in World War II in order for or they were killed. So you're literally like
no, I just mean like the idea that
the corollary. This is something that existed. You know, it's intense.
I was interested when you said you were in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was as well.
Oh, I'll be living in Germany very soon.
Election. And like what the other global scope.
Yeah.
Scott was in Germany when I think it was. Damn it.
I have a lot to tell you guys.
Well, but it's just interesting because how the world.
I'm moving to a small town. To relate to how we as Americans have a lot to think about as we are doing. And I'm proud of us for doing it.
Here for not acknowledging the new person in the room, but like.
I just noticed.
I'm glad.
I can't. By the way, I just saw your face, and I still have closed captioning going on, so I can't see half people. I don't know.
Pretty autistic most of the time too.
Are you supposed to have it like reading to me back? I can see
No,
all.
What's your name online?
You have subtitles on the
Biggest
screen right
poser.
I
now?
have subtitles. Am I supposed to?
No way,
Oh
really?
my god,
I want
that's so
subtitles.
intense.
I can only
Oh,
see like.
David, it's nice to see you,
is
David, and
actually
Tyrisk as well.
Me too.
Welcome to the Thought
That's
Dojo.
wild.
Again, I
Hey,
think
what's up, man?
Tyrisk
See you.
came
What-
up with the term the Thought Dojo,
But I
right?
did
Do you-
see.
Do you have any
this
thoughts
thing
on the slave state that's paying off all of Europe, Germany, or what did you want to say, Stefan?
God,
What were you
Well,
trying to
there's
do?
something about the myth of the boy who cried wolf, and then Paul Revere's journey, and then there's something called the Ipswich Fright. If you look it up on YouTube, there's kind of a story about New England where it's kind of
Maybe
like
the
Paul Revere in
Blitzkrieg, right?
reverse. Where, but yeah, it's hard. It's definitely scary, and it's these
Sounds scary.
stories we have from our history books and from the news, and I think we're supposed to talk about them and learn from them and try to avoid
Yes.
the pitfalls of the past. Hopefully, if we can.
Do you mind? Do you mind, guys? Only because if I don't offer this, you'll never know.
Also,
What's that? We got.
Do you mind? Oh, thank you. All I wanted to say is that I am soon going to be living in a very small but historical city of Germany called Goslar, and Goslar is famous for its Goza beer and it's famous for its Kammerberg mine, which mined gold, precious metals, and silver, and it was established in the 900s. Blah blah blah. Yeah, Goslar. That's that. Yeah, Kammersberg.
Nice Tartarian
This is the city
colors,
where I'll be
yeah.
living, and as long as you're all nice, you're all invited.
Yo,
Especially
that flag
you,
is
okay?
dope, dude. That flag is wild.
It's
dude.
central Germany. But the thing that's interesting about this town is I went to Europe with the determination to find somewhere or an opportunity, pardon, that could help me stay longer term. And I had offerings as in Sweden and in Serbia and in Italy, but I always had, I'm quite a germophile, my friends, and I wanted to be in Germany, and I'll wrap it up really quickly, is that the opportunity I found is ironic, and it's something that I think we would benefit from knowing, is
So
that...
is a germophile the opposite of a germophobe?
I knew
we're on two different
I
levels
should
there.
say
Okay,
a
so you're a germophile.
Deutsche
That helps. That helps a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, wait, do you want to use that as an excuse
by
to
the way,
talk about
no, I think
immigration,
they're synonymous. I think they're synonymous a little bit.
But do you think
they're pretty close
the Germans
together?
are known for their raunchy.
I think that's like I think that's a funny. I would like to bring up inflation, but I also want to talk about immigration, like just really quickly. Yeah, go ahead. No, Alyssa, what are you at?
Well, inflation, like we already avoided the recession. It's fine, right?
No,
Yes,
that's
we
not,
did.
It's not that simple. All right.
Okay.
Really?
No. It's not that simple.
Or-
First of all, US
Inflation's pretty effed. I mean, I feel like inflation's probably the worst
Yeah,
problem we
like,
have, right?
yo,
People
share
are
my
paying
story with
$3,000. Families are paying
right.
$3,000 a month more for groceries than they were before.
Yeah.
Prices are up. The salaries are down. It's pretty much they're down because we're
I'm
not
impressed, Andreas.
if we have an inflation where wages and salaries are not increasing, then they're by definition down, right?
Well,
Yeah,
what's
gas
happening
down,
is the private equity firms are
unemployment
buying out
down.
all the businesses and maintaining the semblance that they're still local, when in fact they're run ultimately by the corporations, and so they have a whole veneer. So it's sneaking in, and they're buying out the single family homes. BlackRock executives would deny it, but they're an umbrella for all these other corporations that are doing it, and so it's happening all over the world too. This isn't just
Why are we arguing about inflation as though it has anything to do with the elections instead of
no? I want to know
what we're doing instead of arguing about how conspiring together about how to claw money back from the government, from the IRS, from all these other, or just steal it straight up from the government.
Put the budget on
Yes.
blast.
But instead,
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Where's the money going? Who's stealing it? I wanted to ask you.
It exists.
I like your
taxation.
point.
Taxation is theft, right? So if you stop.
So I can tell you my point on what my husband Scott taught me.
Yeah.
I grew up in a total Republican conservative home. Me and my sister.
Thanks, Britt. 5 memberships.
And
Conservative. Let me make sure.
I totally agreed with all of it. Like, you're working hard, you're doing whatever you gotta do. Sorry, I'm getting my own feedback. But then
Us.
so I met Scott. He was also in like Germany and like saw the election, and all of a sudden then I'm a pharmacist and I'm making pretty money, whatever. My taxes, if my taxes go to help the like most struggling few to make them even have like a little bit of a, I mean, it's a livable good life. I don't like you have resources.
What if you sign them up for medical care and the medical care is to euthanize the poor, stupid people?
Well, okay, hold on.
Because that's what happens when you pay taxes in 1939 Germany. And it's not really that.
Wait,
it's
what
called
happens?
democratic socialism is like one thing in America, but what democratic socialism used to mean, you would vote about who to kill that year, basically, because somehow like they hadn't invented crypto yet.
You have to get the balance. You can't give handouts, but I'm comfortable helping like my patients that literally can't afford stuff. Like I see families and like, oh my god, that's not the best life, but at least they're living.
So I mean, like, think about how much of how many hundreds of trillions of dollars of the United States sees from drug dealers and terrorists and human traffickers every year. Why not use that money to support people? Why take money from waitresses?
What do they do with that money?
Why take money from waitresses, right? What is this deal about taking money from pharmacists? Why are they taking? Well, they are though. They're taking half of your. Yeah, I get that you are. I get that. I hear you. You're a very noble person. I'm just saying, why are they taking it from you when you're offering not so much compared to a cocaine cartel, right? Well, a lot of the time they get way more money. The government makes a lot more money off of other things than you. It's more like that. Doesn't it seem more like that? There's such a small amount of money that
we go steal it from our neighbors. Gosh darn it! I mean,
I feel like, to me, it feels like they're taking your money not to give it to others, but to keep you from having too much money. So, like, if you had too much money, you might be too autonomous and too independent, and not need them, right?
Well, I just don't like that the federal bank is just completely like left unchecked printing money, like it's going out of style. You know, like that's really not good.
It's designed to be like this.
I'll leave it here. Why are they taxing the middle class and not the fucking rich?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that right? Is that wrong?
Come on.
Is that wrong? Am I wrong to say that? Like, why are they taxing waitresses? Why? That would be my thing. I would say no taxing waitresses, no taxing teachers, no taxing people, like women and children first, right? Protect them from the taxes.
Going too. I mean, we're just saying it because you're like looking at it. You're like, that was the thing with Germany, right? World War I was freaking humiliating. Okay, and they had their socialism. If you look at the history of Germany before it went crazy with eugenics stuff, completely over the top, they're doing a lot of social programs. They had a boon. Let's be clear, like Germany had like a giant, like it was taken off and it was doing really well. And then they're like, I got a good idea. Let's put all this money towards the military and just go completely military focused. Like that's like the center of it all. And that's what's scary about what's happening now is like our military with our federal taxes is about as socialist as you can get. Like we can talk about the post office and the fire department or whatever, but the freaking military is mega socialist. It's just a matter of allocation of like where we're putting, what our priorities are. That's what I was saying about Mitch McConnell and the NCAA.
You know what? I hate to say it like that, but I think Stefan's point. David makes Stefan's point. Stefan, your point sounded kind of ridiculous when you first said it, but now it's so true. It's not even a metaphor, because the idea that the United States military-industrial complex is where the majority of our tax dollars are going for the purpose of protecting this industrial system, it's to protect your Roman Empire.
Alyssa, what was that? It was what though?
When I hear about the military budget, it's like the space. All of this, like money on the but the space budget, NASA, whatever, created satellites, all this stuff. And then military budget is important for many reasons. That's all I know.
It's important
but it is.
It's important for in the past, in the 90s, we'd say it's important for Halliburton. At this point, we can list a
job that had a starting salary of $50,000 in the 90s. Today, you're kind of looking at the same. If it's the same job, you're still looking at around $50,000. When in reality, the money has inflated about 100% since then. So maybe that what seems to be lagging behind in certain things is just the perception of what does it mean to earn six figures in 1990. Used to me, it's like what it used earning six figures in 1990 or 1999 was probably more like earning like $250,000 nowadays or something somehow.
Yeah, you could get like a house with like a 4% loan too.
Yeah, outside of what the money could buy as well. Yeah.
20%.
Isn't it just the Bill Hicks quote about what if we just took all the money that we spent on bombs and war and just put it towards clothing and feeding every
Big Bill
human
Hicks
being?
fan.
Like what world would we be living in? It's I don't know. It's just really obvious.
I know.
Every president, when they get elected, needs to be dosed with
Say that.
psilocybin really hard.
You got the generals,
any
man, but the problem is that alone doesn't do it. This ties us back to something we were talking about earlier when we were talking about psychedelics.
And then CBT therapy.
This is the thing, right? It's like the thing in it, like people treat the substances like it's just like going to the theater or something. Did you do the thing? It's what you do with your experience is like becomes what it is. Like people, one person. You could be like, I didn't know what the hippie thing was about LSD in the 60s until I had LSD 25, which is it's not common. And you have something that's that pure, and you're like, oh my God, this could save the planet. But the thing is that you can't account for the nature of some people and just the way that they are. If you give the substance to a sociopath, they can become super ego sociopath and
You
go
just had the right
like,
precursors in your system. That
Well,
time.
instead of thinking I'm part of God, they'll think I am
It's
God.
regulated.
it doesn't just
That's
do the thing to you. It's your participatory.
What I heard Andreas
Yeah.
say was that he thinks it's awesome that they're actually
Studies.
talking about psychedelic research on the main stage, and it's
It's
something
true.
that's no longer being criminalized and determined how criminal it should. There's a portion of it that's being studied in an academic fashion. So
I think raising taxes as opposed to lowering taxes is dangerous. I think raising taxes can de-incentivize working in the United States. It's what happened in the 90s. It was why Apple and Pepsi and big companies started divesting from the United States and holding their money overseas, right? Apple had, what was it, $120 million that they couldn't bring over until 2018. In 2018, they had some sort of a tax break so they could bring their money back home.
The thing is they do tax them like you're mad about paying taxes. No,
That good.
you should just
I have
remind
no
her
idea.
To mute herself. You should remind her to mute herself.
No, I want to hear what your friend is saying. You're
Yeah,
like
get in here,
having
Andrea.
Wide conversation with your
Andrea.
friend. There, can you like pretend to have two heads or something?
If you're talking about taxes,
Drive me crazy, only because I don't understand. There's this huge, and I don't understand like the tax brackets or the richest how much they get taxed, but I know they do not get taxed the way that other people are. Maybe that's supposed to make the economy run. So
well, why would I bring money to your country if you were going to take it from me, right? Because taxation's theft. So I can go to Mexico. If I go to Mexico, well, then I'll go to Paraguay and I'll take a little bit less. You know what I mean? Because I'm a business. If I'm a business, I'm not going to waste money in a country that takes too much of it. I'll go to a different country, right?
You know what they say? Inflation is the greatest tax, though, in the long run.
No, but like what I can do is I can say I can build the roads in your country for you. I can make sure that happens because I need to have roads for my trucks, right? This is what happens. So you look at Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley will be a country.
Sorry, thinking about building roads.
I got broken there.
Thought about Haiti and
So no, like Silicon Valley. So in Silicon Valley, Facebook says, okay, we could be in Silicon Valley, but we could also be elsewhere. What are you going to do for me that we put our business in Silicon Valley? And then Silicon Valley says, okay, well, we're going to lower the taxes for you, but you're going to do this for us. And then they make an agreement and they say, okay, you're going to have housing here. You're going to do roads. You're going to have Google decides we're going to be in Silicon Valley. We could be in Silicon Valley, but we also could be in Richmond.
The other organizations that operate like this are sports teams.
Yeah.
Outside of the government, with an air base or military base. You have sports teams that they could either rebuild the stadium in situ, and then they could split the cost of civil engineering improvement, or they could just choose the other vacant lot. Or
the other way it works, though, is that you have a villainship in a feudal system where you have a bunch of serfs, and you say, okay, I have this many serfs, and I want them to bring me as much cotton as possible, right?
See, Terrace, do you think he's joking right now? Because again, just took he's talking about like Snow White in the Seven Dwarfs territory almost, with just like this. It's like living on the Shire in a feudal system, right?
But you say, right, we'll incentivize that these people.
But I agree that
you
have the government. You can work for the government if you want to keep up with taxes or sports franchises, and I think those are a new thing. I think they're underestimated because what a
They're
lot,
paying
even if you start out as a
athletes.
ticket salesman, minimum wage, a lot of places, if you just continue working for them for 30 years, unless you get fired, they move you laterally to do something for the same amount of pay. maybe
Alyssa, I
more,
want to. What?
and
what's going
eventually
on? What do you got?
vertically
got?
within the
You got
organization.
something. You're
Easy.
coming in hot.
Well, I mean, wait, when you bring up like sports, like, oh my God, think of all of that money. Like, where's just for
But that's
being
what they do.
good at it, being an athlete? It's great. But I don't know, like you said, other workers or all the other, like, spread the fucking wealth. But also
They
to
do.
But
To
let's
be
say
a-
they
to
had
be a sports
iPhones a
star, you
thousand
have to
years
have
ago. Let's say
bouncers.
we're
they're
actually
rich
iPads.
as fuck, but that they pay like
I think what's unique about us is our sports in this culture, in modern
trickles down.
American culture.
I don't want to say trickle down.
We got like 5 or 6, 7, 8 sports where you can just sell out stadiums locally of just people who apparently got nothing better to do than spend
Oh, I can't go to a
all over the
stadium.
world, not
Like
just America.
$500.
Cup of beer with their buddies.
Like we
you
got
know,
players from Japan making like the like MVP and stuff.
Yeah. So I
You're
can't go to
talking about the
Vatican.
taxes, you know, like I with my dad was Republican, he was a Trump supporter, you know, and he lives in Idaho, you know, and I was trying to tell him about what was going on with Bernie, like back when I was like, I think the whole thing for him is about this bill. Like he made some deal that it's just like, but I think they promised it to him that he didn't even end up giving him the thing that he was hoping that they would give to him, you know, because that was his work. Like he did, like a lot went into that. But I showed my dad the part of the bill about taxation, about how he's going to distribute, how he's going to work it out in the rungs of people's earnings. And my dad looked at it and he was like, that can't be it. I was like, Dad, this is the official. This is it. And he was like, well, that's reasonable. And he was like, it didn't make any sense because he's like, he watched Fox News and whatever the hell. And he was like, that's what he's talking about. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, and we wouldn't have to deal with the freaking insurance companies and the premium and the whole freaking thing. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I think I like this Bernie guy because he'd been hating on him hardcore. And I was like, Dad, they're not telling you what it is that he's actually.
Like,
but then it wasn't time.
What's that policy?
Well,
I keep hearing about.
Go ahead.
The social, actually, those are the ads I saw in Wisconsin.
Right.
They want to quit Social Security. I'm like, can you do that? Like, as a law? Like, can Trump or Republicans
invented Social Security. We're not getting rid of it. There's no way that the United States as a whole will ever be able to get rid of it because it's something that's existed since before FDR, and it's something that Nixon pushed for even beyond that. So like there's no way as a republic that we could function without some sort of this is the same thing. There's certain I mean, this is what's weird. The Democrats and the Republicans are both socialists. The difference is whether or not they're statists or whether they're ANCAP socialists. So you have You have the Trotskyites, which were the neoconservatives, and they're Marxists, right? But you also have the Democrats, which are kind of Stalinite, although that has connotations to it. The Democrats were socialist in a level that was more about the state building systems as opposed to the Soviets, right? The
Trotskyites wanted the corporatism, and it's the special interest groups being relatively detached from the governing.
The dark side.
It's special interest committees versus corporations. That's basically the difference at the end of the day, which is why it makes sense to have any social system. But since we talked about interest and inflation and taxes, I think it also relates, and war, it does relate to foreign policy, because we talked about the United States builds the military-industrial complex in order to prevent disharmony and to sustain Pax Americana, this sort of Babylon system that we've created, right? So,
but see, can we draw a distinction between the industrial military complex being used for war gaming and exercises and like aiming and like
whole other thing. Should we get into foreign policy?
Oh no, but
that's what I'm trying to say, because
versus using it to actually play go capture your flag
and I'm
find
kidding.
the treasury and the gold in the countries and the oil and bring it home.
Harp on that in a second. All I'm trying to say is that one isn't, they call it isolationist policies. Isolationist policies are just saying we're not going to use our resources for the military-industrial stage. The other is saying we're going to put all of our resources into the Ukraine, into the pirates in Senegal, that we make sure that Djibouti is safe, that we're protecting our assets in Corsica, that we have nukes ready in the South Pacific. Yes. I mean, that is really, and so who's doing what? Well, Dick Cheney is a statist, and he wants to maintain the military-industrial complex, and so somehow that's ended up in the hands of the DNC, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I also think, like, I wish I could think what my husband would, like, it's about keeping Like people can't just like come in and do shit. I don't know, like making it simple. But it's
Well,
not
we were
that
talking
simple,
about
and that's
taxes
why
and,
it's stuck.
and inflation and the cost to the average person. And all I'm saying is our government needs to steal and kill better on our behalf so that things will be cheaper for us. Like Donald Trump would say, gasoline just used to cost like, $1.87, because 187 is the code for murder. But, and he somehow chose that number always, in all of his speeches. But it was like, because,
It'll be
when you don't
electric
have it, you
vehicles.
send people with guns and all of a sudden you have gasoline again somehow. And it's real cheap.
Well, it does
But
seem to me
it's not
that
really,
this is.
it's not really cheap, because
I
it
feel like
costs
this is a bigger issue than people realize.
Huge issue.
The military-industrial
It's
complex,
too
whether or
hard.
not we're supporting Ukraine, we're
sorry.
fighting in all these international wars. That's the argument. Should we be spending
There's a
all of this
reason.
money for that? Yeah.
There is a real reason. If I could articulate it, I would tell you right now.
Anybody? Does anybody have a reason why we should be involved in Atlanticism, monopolizing a new world government?
Why are the NATO bases closer to Russia than Russia was in Cuba to Florida?
No, I have a legitimate theory. It'll only take me 15 seconds, but I feel like terrorists. Do you have a theory?
About wait, what specific? I'm hearing like two different conversations that I'm trying to pay attention to, or something like that.
Well, Andreas presented a question about why we're sticking our nose in pretty much like anywhere and everywhere.
As you mean, like America being the world police?
Yeah,
right.
Not even like the world police.
This is it. George
America, fuck yeah, right here.
George Herbert Walker Bush said this: "We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs in the conduct of nations, where we are successful, and when we are successful, and we will have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the United Nations founders." Right? This is kind of
that was on September 11th of what year?
Bro, that was 1991 or something.
Right. So that isn't that from the same speech, or it's from the same day as what's in The Big Lebowski at the beginning when he signs the check, September 11th, and he looks over at the screen and George Bush is there. It was like, I think it was later that day, and it was like another speech because it was like a fucking heated time,
George of the Jungle, that's based. Good job, bro.
Stand, man.
Andreas, this aggression will not stand. Sorry.
Aggression.
I mean, what exactly are we afraid of? Like when it comes to a new world order, like it's because when culture starts to dissolve away, right? When there is no culture left, is that what we're really?
That's the Orwell fear, but the Aldous Huxley fear is one of a bombardment of so much information that you become complacent and you can't move. Like you can't really, and also this idea.
I feel like you set up a system and it's perfect once, but so here,
what's the alternative?
My theory. So that's a nice follow-up question. What Terrace, and he does ask great questions. He's great. So the question outside of why are we trying to become the new world order, and then is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing that there should be one overarching world force for this, that, or the other?
We got like 10 more minutes, so I just wanted us to try to get through this one. But okay, the idea of a new world
and that's just
order,
for the audience that they can even ask themselves.
What's the
alternative? Trying to stick together a narrative of what's the alternative.
What is the alternative? I don't know.
The alternative to a world order is a multipolar world. And a multipolar world, it's where people have different opinions on what is truth. Basically,
I'd like to add Einstein's in his diary where he talks about a one world government, where he says he makes the argument that he says a one world government is absolutely necessary for the survival of the human race. That basically, if we just continue to fight each other, we'll destroy each other, and the whole thing will collapse. And he says we need that one world government, but the problem is that in all likelihood, that one world government will be one nation or a few nations dominating the rest of the world through their massive military strength. So he's like, that's the impasse that we come to. But
I believe Mr. Plate, what if someone was investing in their investing advice was, see, what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to put all our eggs in one big giant basket, right? What could go wrong, right? And it's like, again, do we have are we goldfish? Like with memory and history and the reasons why America is sticking its nose in everywhere is because our enemies, after we mucked around in the rest of the world and the CIA did all this nonsense and we got caught doing it, by everyone, and they took us to, and they weren't satisfied, then they jack up, they make the life intolerable for the citizens in there as one form of revenge. And then how there's like a deadfall trap where there's just like a whole bunch of like, and like the little peahen goes and like pecks a little piece of corn and like knocks something out and wham, it doesn't like catch the animal, it like kills it so that whatever, and that's what's set up with our military. Like if the United States, we go around and we poke into these things at this point because we're for sale and our enemies think it's funny to watch us on reality television, essentially like lemmings in certain situations.
Well,
as revenge for the malfeasance that the CIA did during the 70s all the way up through, right? I don't know.
There's Hartman's triangle. So there's the oppressor, there's the oppressed, and there's the ally. And as long as we continue to relate to things on a national level and even on a personal level, like, because that's like Artie Lang would look for like knots that existed where you have unreconcilable issues and how they'll go in a freaking circle. And so like these kind of issues are like an example of that, where on its own terms, it can't really be fixed. You need something to break the inertia that's from outside of itself. So like if things are left to just go as they're going in this automated way, it's necessary breakdown.
This is why we need Marianne Williamson.
You have to have something come along that's a big enough variable. There's that book, The Black Swan Theory.
If we go to war,
predict the Black Swan. You were talking earlier about that story. The guy who
extracted the money, they've extracted the morale, they've extracted even the fun out of politics. We didn't even get round 1, 2, 3 of the debate this time, like we did with Trump and Hillary. They sucked all the fun out of everything, and then now they're going to want blood. And there's blood on our own streets. Americans are very inefficient at killing each other. Well, because we like the same drugs,
I think we need some kind of like spiritual leader as a
whether it be alcohol.
Marianne Williamson had the right idea. She was like she seemed really crazy to us, like really out of left field. But I don't know. I think she was on something.
She was into like A Course in Miracles and stuff. As soon as I heard that early on, and I was just like, oh, okay, she's great. I never really questioned her again too much. Because I was just like, oh, okay, she's hip to that. It's cool. Nice lady, I'm sure.
So is there any other points that you guys feel like you wanted to, like, what are the things that you wanted to bring up? You wanted to argue about your sides, or, anything you see in the world?
I will end. What?
I don't have an argument, but I have one thing I want to say. All right. As far as inflation goes, I really think it's a very simple issue, right? It's not a matter of like who. I don't even think either presidential candidate is going to fix this, but I think everyone should be cognizant of it, where it's like, at the end of the day, when the federal bank can control interest rates, because every company's in debt. Every company you could think of is in debt. That debt is natural in America. In fact, we're like, everyone here is probably in some form or another in debt. So you could consider this: if everyone's in debt, whoever controls the rate at which you have to pay back and how much you have to pay back after a certain amount of time, they basically control where your priorities lie when it comes to your money. And when they control that to the point where it's like, we literally live in economic diabetes. We live our money is like our ability to store our energy like fat. And if we can't do that, that's like having diabetes. That means our money is toxic. And if our money is backed by nothing and our interest rates can be controlled arbitrarily by this private interest called the federal bank, which is basically a cartel, that's a huge problem. And I think beyond just like ideological talking points, this shit affects us all. This also has to do with the military industrial complex, because if we're all in debt, we're all literally in debt. We're in servitude of this no matter what, because at the end of the day, the unit of measurement in which we're exchanging our chi, our energy, it's toxic. It's not working. That's broken. And Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, neither. I think they're both going to make it worse in their own way. So that's why I take that. This is why I think inflation's important.
When you said either one, I feel like even watching conventions or anything, there's a dystopian, fearful. I don't like when I hear Donald Trump or anyone speak. Like, it's a very fearful, like angry thing. When I hear, it's just not fun. I don't want to hear it. Like, that's not how I view our country.
Right.
And
once again, it's by design.
Come on, anything or anybody, like that's
to direct you.
Hopeful, or like a place to move forward. Like, let's get through all this stupid rhetoric. Use rhetoric.
Right.
I got rhetoric, but that's how I feel when I've watched.
That's why Trump was selected. That's why Trump was pushed by the Democrats.
Negative, but I don't want to feel that about our country.
You know, David's point, right? That originally, when Hillary Clinton was running for president back in 2016, Bill Clinton was looking for somebody to help her win, and so he had called his buddy at the time, Donald Trump, and said, "Hey, can you run kind of as a gag? Can you run for the Republicans?" And can you make it look kind of obnoxious?
Right.
You know,
and the reason why he went for it was because he, at that point, he was doing really bad in the ratings because of freaking Hannah Montana. So he's getting beat out by freaking, what's her name? Cyrus. So yeah, he originally he was like, "Oh, okay, I'll go along for the ride," and then I'll be able to talk crap about her for the 4-8 years or whatever follows, and then he just like went with the motions.
Mr. Play, as
and now
a
running.
fun factoid, so I heard that he quit The Apprentice or was pissed because he found out Gwen Stefani was making more as a judge on whether it was America's Got Talent or X Factor or something, and so he basically was like willing to walk off because he found.
Oh, maybe it was Gwen Stefani. I'm probably remembering that wrong. It's been so long since. Yeah, I went over that. Okay, yeah, no.
But it's pretty interesting though because he was literally running to be obnoxious. His character was supposed to be the villain to make her look good. Right?
He legit was selling Trump steaks and Trump like water or something at his third press conference, as if he was going, no, trust me, guys, this is definitely a work. I'm definitely not running for president.
I find it interesting and important.
Trump steaks for at least one or two of the photo shoots that he's like press conferences. I mean,
Alyssa, sorry, what are you trying to say, Alyssa? Sorry.
You're a woman. No, it's still about the feeling of any part of where it can go. Like, I don't need doomsday. I don't. It's fine, great, but really, is it that bad right now?
What I'd like to say is it would be lovely to have a woman as a president. It would be great if we got that off our backs at some point. I just don't know if this is going to be the round that it happens. And like,
I know
retrospectively,
I'm sure we're going to have a woman president. She might. We definitely will. She might have a penis. The way things are going, but it's going to happen.
And just to address, what was it? It was his name was Darren, the guy that hopped off the stream.
Yeah.
I missed question, he brought up the idea of rounding up, and for some people's perception, and Trump has been saying in his speeches that it's going to be the largest deportation program ever if he gets back in office.
Ooh, Darren,
and that's probably going to be true.
Darren,
I was going to say that's probably going to be true whether or not Trump gets in office or not.
You got about 4 minutes. No. I wanted to frame
what
this
what that means is you get a free ride home if there's again like deportation. I don't know what that really means.
Well, hold on, give me a second. I wanted to frame this because the way Alyssa just put that.
Hi, everybody.
I think good to see Daryl. I think it's really interesting in the political theater how the protagonist and the antagonist, how the opera villain works, right? And so it is interesting that an opera villain, and so for the Republicans right now, Kamala Harris is this opera villain, but also you got to admit the way you described it, Trump is an opera villain. Trump is totally an opera villain. He's got this embellished, and if I do this, then this will happen. The world will go bad if you follow me. Right? This kind of
spectacle,
Pied Piper spectacle,
entertainment.
So
by the way, I didn't know you had Darren just chilling in the cut, but I summoned him somehow.
Do you feel manipulated by that energy that it's like, oh wow, I would go the opposite direction of this guy? So he's like a stick and she's a carrot. Is it not just manipulative energy? I'll just go the opposite of whatever this guy is.
Energy.
Guys, we're discussing rhetoric now.
Yes.
No?
Yeah, I said it.
Rhetoric.
Which I don't like.
Rhetoric is what convinces people of something, and how you say it has the most impact, and how you relate to people too, and what feelings they're relating to, without maybe understanding the full message of what is being said.
Wait, what's rhetoric? The guy who worked for Dracula?
I don't know what the deportation thing is scary in rhetoric, but it doesn't change. I live in a sanctuary city, I think, in a commonwealth. And it doesn't matter who the president is. The rules in Massachusetts don't change, as far as I know.
I don't know about the Commonwealth, but I know
doesn't matter. Like depending on, right? I mean, there may be certain states that rely more on the federal government for certain decisions or for certain processes. But what I heard is about Massachusetts is the only government of the states that has all three branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial all claim that there's like a secret court system, a secret legislature, and a secret executive system that are all running like a deep state for the state itself, not for the whole country or anything. And
It's a state within a state
and they're
within a
like,
state.
there's a ballot question. They're like trying to say like, well, maybe the legislature shouldn't, because other states have 2 of the 3, but Massachusetts
Keep state turtles all the way down.
Well,
Okay,
some
well,
of the
we're at.
powerful universities are there too, right?
I have one thing I have to say, Andreas. Can I just
that's,
insert something?
That's what we're doing. We're doing the ending things here. So David, go.
I just want to say that I kind of noticed a synchronicity, because before we started this call and we were on this video and we were on the last one, talking about diabetes, and I was like, I inserted myself to say that I was told by a friend of mine who's diabetic that his doctor almost like advised him on drinking vodka. He was like, you shouldn't drink any other alcohol except for vodka. And he was like, if you're going to drink, only drink vodka. And it's something with the sugar. But I was like, it's just funny because I just inserted almost all I said, because I just jumped in on the end of the call. And then you're like there wearing a freaking vote for vodka shirt. It's the total thing.
Is that the message? Come on, we have a much better message than
Honestly,
don't listen to that if you're like me and you're a diabetic and an alcoholic.
Even as a Mormon, I'm torn.
Yeah.
But no, Darren, what do you got? What do you got? Tell me. Where are we leaving? Are we going to try to leave this at a place, because we're near the 2-hour mark, and I want to make sure we get some closing words out.
I like the 2-hour mark. I think it's good I think we should keep this up, and we should do it again, and let's review what it was we were trying best to discuss, and also maybe what we didn't get to. Yeah.
We talked a bit about immigration and foreign policy. I think that's kind of
policy.
I like that. Brendan and Chris's. I liked everyone's offerings. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
It's helped me think about things in new ways, also about what's not easy to discuss and the reasons for that. I think we all want to get something out, and I wonder when one exhausts themselves having gotten it all out, and then there's nothing left. And I hope that there's a point when one is exhausted by what they have to present, that they say, what do you think? And then that's an invitation to really get the ball rolling. Ooh. By that, I mean, the discussion. So it's enlightening, and I appreciate all of you coming tonight. And it wasn't easy for me either. I had to tell no to several people I care a great deal about. But I care about you guys too. I care about our decisions we make as a country. I care about our decisions we make as a planet. So,
Darren, one thing I heard you say was that you had like a 4-page essay of thoughts that was well composed, but you realized coming on the air and kind of going through point by point, we'd be kind of hitting people over the head with it. And I appreciate. I mean, and then.
I appreciate that. So
there's a lot of that. Andreas feels that all the time. That is what it's like to be Andreas most of the time. There's even on one of his other shows, there's a special button that's the host presses every time there's like a rabbit hole, and it's like, oh, Andreas is about to jump into like a 45-second.
Everybody needs.
Andreas is my hero in many ways. Andreas, if I'm going to tell you face to face.
It's a solid.
I don't have that, but I do have this song. I just made a new song while we were talking. Here's a new song.
You too.
Yeah, his music too. No one.
Has made me
Wait, who is American Time Machine? Andreas, is that you?
No, that's Kurt, bro.
I like it. It's called Pretty Little Electron.
That's the right way to end this. All right, dance party. I'm just kidding.
The chorus is say something nice about Kamala Harris.
Guys, look at it.
Darren thought this wasn't going to go over well. He's like, no, dance party. Haha, very funny. Everyone is